wanted to. All right. So this is our conversation with Jim Finn, author Jim Finn, and both nonfiction and fiction, about how Jim uses the Medium platform to share his work. So just so that Jim knows who's in the room, I'm going to ask everyone just to say who you are in one sentence, or what you write in one sentence, and then he'll have some context for framing his what he shares with us to make it useful. Michelle.
Okay, I identify as a queer author, a mother, and an active member of the Vancouver writing community. And I write love stories of the quirky and diverse.
And you are traditionally published with 2 different publishers in sci-fi and gay romance.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Kirsten.
I write primarily middle grade and YA, and I'm unpublished currently.
Okay.
And Marie. I'll unmute you. Oh, I couldn't unmute you. You're gonna have to do it yourself.
All right. I write nonfiction. I write children's books and young adult books, and also some romance. So.
Lovely.
Susan.
I write short fiction, literary, science fiction, all kinds of weird things, and some novels that are unpublished.
Great.
Okay.
And multi-published with her short fiction, Susan is. She's also didn't say that she's a publisher of quite a popular magazine, or a literary journal, I guess, not a magazine,
Nice.
right? Bonnie.
Hi, I write middle grade and picture books for historical, and then adult nonfiction. I'm published in nonfiction, and I'm agented in Kidlit, but not published yet.
Okay.
And Holly.
I write kind of a medieval themed fantasy. I've written 2 novels and working on the 3rd.
Okay.
And Deborah. Oh.
And unfortunately, I have to take my husband to the airport, so I can't stay.
That's okay. You can watch the recording.
The recording.
If,
Yeah,
well, and
thanks.
after Deborah says who she is, if she unmutes herself, then if you have a specific question for Jim before you leave, Holly, then just pop that up and we'll deal with it. Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. And Deborah? No? Okay. Leslie, I know you've just arrived. If you want to unmute yourself and just let Jim know what you write, then you will know.
I write everything. Short stories.
Love it. Me too.
You can imagine.
I pretty much write everything. So.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to start just by, I think what I'm going to do is share the screen right off the bat and introduce you to Jim. Maybe Jim, you want to start talking and.
Yeah. Well, let me introduce myself the same way that the gang did. I am an agented fiction writer. I am going to be traditionally published in queer YA. I am not yet, and partly because I got in trouble with Random House with some of my other activities. I'm pretty outspoken queer activist, and I got kicked off of a social media platform that I was a power user in. I mean, I was writing on Quora.com, and I was huge. I mean, I was hugely viral. I had 1 million, I had 1 million reads a month on my stories, and they were very excited to publish me because they knew that they could get me. They knew that I could bring in thousands of readers on my own without their help. And when I got in trouble with my outspoken activism, they told me that we've been through the entire editing process. The book is done, and they were about to send it, to the press, and they pulled it for budget reasons, worrying that they weren't going to be able to sell it since I no longer had marketing draw.
And I hope you're doing air quotes with that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty upset about it. I mean, this all went down more than a year ago, so I've coped, I've adjusted, and I'm working hard to reestablish, followings on different social media so that they can feel that I'm partnering with them again.
Right. So,
but I think they were also worried. You know, I really am outspoken and something, and I don't hold my tongue. And I think they were worried as much about that. I think they were worried as much about why I got banned as the fact that I got banned.
mm.
So,
So, and you haven't. So, and just, I mean, it's a little bit, maybe not an aside, but did you join Medium then as a way to start to build some of that following?
I did.
Okay.
I did. In fact, I joined Medium. I woke up one morning to a WhatsApp message on my phone from my friend and mentee at Bristol University in England, and he said, "I want to make sure that I'm the first person to tell you this, but you just got banned from Quora." And before noon that day, I had established a footprint on Medium and published an article that was read by 1,000 people right off the rip.
Wow.
And friends of mine and followers of mine from Quora who, you know, wanted to know what the hell was going on. But so I've been building a following since then, and I've built a large following also on Twitter and Facebook, and that's helping a lot.
Right.
So
it's quite a different platform, Quora to Medium, and we don't have to talk about that. I don't want to go down that. But so what I'm really curious about is I follow virtually everything you write, and I love the nonfiction. The activism is where you've got me fully engaged and angry and talking about what you're writing, and but you also do fiction, so you've got these two very different but not different,
and very different voices.
Yes.
So my fiction writing, and of course I have different voices from story to story and novel to novel, you know, obviously also. But
so what made you decide to start sharing? I understand the nonfiction medium is a great platform and kind of an obvious place for people to write nonfiction and share you've got calls to action in virtually everything you write, and if it's not calls to action, it's calls to think. But you've got your fiction. What made you decide to serialize on Medium? And maybe
let me show you. The very first, if you can click on my blog, if you can click to fiction so go into the blog.
Why am I here?
You're on my profile. You would click into my blog instead.
Yeah, here we go. Okay, there's your blog.
Okay.
Comes.
Now click on fiction projects.
Yeah, and there are the 4.
Okay, now click on Caleb's stories.
Okay.
Now this is the second iteration of those stories right now. I published them as I wrote them, day to day. Wow. on a different publication, and I publish 1 chapter a day. And this is I don't even know why I started. I was talking to my student friend Fred Shirley in England, and we had been working together on nonfiction projects about conversion therapy. And I was like, you know, I'm so upset about it that the only way that I feel that I can properly talk about this is write a story about it. And I intended to write a story. I intended to write a 1-chapter short story. And I sat down at my kitchen table and I started writing in first person, present tense, and it just poured out of me. And by the time I had come to a point where I thought the story was getting too long, I said, well, this is a 2-chapter story, so I'm going to end it here and I'm going to publish it. And I did. And it blew up. Medium was a little different then. Curation was different, and fiction versus nonfiction was different. But somebody at Medium decided they really loved the story, and it blew up. I got hundreds of people reading it, hundreds of people commenting on it, and you won't tell this as much from here because I moved it to my blog, and it didn't get the huge response on my blog that it did the first time I published it, obviously.
Right. I'm just trying to figure now, if I go to the bad stuff part 1 or the good stuff part 1, does that lead us to the next?
Yeah, click on the bad stuff part 1.
Yeah, just so folks can see how it goes. So there's your opening line. My name is Caleb and I'm gay. All right.
Right. I know you probably think I can't know that for real because I'm only 15. I really know, though.
Yeah.
And it's there's a lot of pathos in the story, and there's a lot of genuineness. And for some reason, it really connected with people. I mean, it's always mysterious when something like that happens.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you see the 2.9 thousand claps there? That's a fraction of what the original version had.
Right.
So that, to answer your question, and that's why. That's
right.
why I started publishing fiction on Medium, because I published this chapter right here by accident. I sat down and I whipped it out in 90 minutes at my kitchen table because it connected deeply and powerfully with me, and I wanted to share it with people.
Yeah.
And it woke me up. I said, wait a minute, there's no audience here of hungry people who want to read this kind of stuff.
And I just want to show folks who aren't aware or may not be aware, like that one of the wonderful things I think, and I'd love for you to talk about this, Jim, is that people can engage. So people can respond, and you've got all kinds of people responding to your writing in real time that you can then write to them back. So it's like having live beta readers. They can also highlight things. Now you highlighted this one. I bet you tweeted that, right? Or I don't know why you
Yes, that's exactly why it's highlighted, because I used that as a pull quote to tweet and to post on Facebook.
Yeah. Other people can also highlight things, and see, Artemis and James also highlighted those. And then I don't know what this comment is, but I will take it.
That's probably a private comment. You can click on it and see.
No, it's not.
Okay.
There you go. So there you go. Someone else. But people can comment, and
then you can see those down below also. So. Right.
But it's interesting that, so if somebody is reading your story though, and let's say I didn't believe this, like I read this, I know you probably think I can't know for real because I'm only 15, or I react to that like I knew when I was 13, they can highlight this the way I'm doing now and click comment.
Immediately comment on it, yeah. And they can choose to either make it a private note, or they can publish it as a comment for everyone to see.
Yeah, and that means that for you as the writer, you know exactly where people are as readers, like, which is such a beautiful thing, I think.
And to be honest with you, and this is what you and I talked about once, why publish on Medium, especially if you're not putting it behind the paywall? Why publish a big fiction project on Medium when you're not getting paid? And part of the reason is exactly that interaction, because as a writer, you can feed off the energy of your readers during the creation project.
Yeah.
Even if you don't intend, even if you intend to then eventually pull it and rewrite it and polish it and submit it for traditional publication, you've still got that okay, so art is something that art doesn't exist in my head, and it doesn't exist in my reader's head. It exists in some mythical space between the two of us. Real art happens when art is consumed. So as an artist, I get to, when I publish serially on Medium, one chapter at a time, I get to be part of that, and it changes the experience for me. That's not always good, but it's worth experiencing sometimes.
Right. So you said this was the second draft. Like, so
this version is, there's a previous version of this story elsewhere on Medium, if I haven't deleted it yet, and I can't remember.
So I'm curious about that process. So you had way more readers of that first version, and you put it out day by day, ugly first draft, but clearly a well-written ugly first draft, and then you've revised it and are publishing it again. Are you,
and have published again. It's up and it's finished. So.
And are any of these stories, the 4 stories that you have in Medium, are they headed for traditional or self-publishing where you can sell it on Amazon, for instance?
The one that I wanted to talk about today, which is not YA fiction, it's agented, but she's like, I don't know how I'm going to sell this because it's literary fiction and it's a mystery and it's queer and it's weird. It's fabulous. I love it. I cried and I laughed and it was brilliant, and I don't have the slightest idea how I'm going to sell it to anybody. So. And
is that one of the ones that you're also sharing on Medium?
Yes, and that's the one that I want to talk about today.
Let me go back. Which one is that one?
Click on David and the Lion's Den.
Okay.
let me make sure we're in the right place. Yes, story and chapter guide. Okay, now this is a whole different project. I'm probably going to self-publish this, but this is a whole different project. I started writing this novel 10 years ago, and I wrote it as I write most of my novels in a lined notebook with pencil.
Wow.
The first draft and a stack of erasers.
Mm-hmm.
Because I find I can connect to my writing better that way. Obviously not how I wrote the piece that I just talked about a second ago, which is much shorter and less complicated. This is a very complex, very nuanced David and the Lion's Den. Very complex, very nuanced, very literary novel about art and perception and HIV, and it also happens to be a serial killer mystery.
Oh, wow.
So
wow.
It's really weird, but in a really, really, really interesting way. People who have read this, my beta readers on Medium, love it. And I get such brilliant comments for it. But I started writing it 10 years ago, and I went through a couple of drafts, and only the first draft was on paper. I mean, I got it digitized pretty fast.
Yeah.
And so maybe if you can click on the first chapter.
Okay, chapter 1. So, and I love that you refer to these, you're calling them your beta readers.
Right, workshop readers.
Which
so
is
we can go down to...
So that writers here in the Creative Academy have such trouble finding, except from other people within the Creative Academy.
Right, and I get hundreds of them on Medium. Sometimes thousands, and maybe that my agent worries sometimes that that's too many. She's like, I don't want this many people seeing it because those people would have bought your book.
Do you know, that's interesting. That'll be an interesting thing to know if ultimately they will buy your book.
But I think they will, because I have so many people telling me, will you please hurry up and get this printed, because I don't care if I want to read it on paper in one go.
Exactly.
I want to own this book. So, and I think they would buy it.
Right.
But you know, this is all very traditional novel writing stuff. I mean, look at the first sentence. I slouched on the old-fashioned park bench and tried not to stare at the hooker.
Mm-hmm.
And that's every theme in the novel is expressed in that first sentence, even though you won't know it when you're looking at it at first. And I've had enough really educated, really cool literary beta readers who are able to go through the whole thing and see that and highlight that stuff for me and say, oh, you did this so well, or wait a minute, this is all good, I love it, but hey, this paragraph in chapter 6, what the hell were you thinking? It clashes. And I usually get negative notes
because people are trying to be helpful.
Private. I get negative notes in private, and usually because they are genuinely helpful, and people tend to understand that negative criticism that's genuinely helpful should be given in private.
Yes, yes, exactly.
But I just had a question. Why is none of this stuff behind a paywall? And that's a very good question. When I originally started on Medium, I had no intention of trying to get paid for my writing. It wasn't any part of my plan. And when I originally started on Medium, that might have been okay because I was getting curated. This novel got curated. Serialized novels don't ever get curated, ever get curated on Medium. This novel got curated.
And is that because of the timing or because it is that special?
Maybe because it's just that good. No, I'm kidding. Not at all. Things used to be a little bit different on Medium, and curators had a little, the curation. You didn't even know when you got curated. I didn't know that this novel got curated until a few weeks ago, because you didn't used to be able to tell.
It didn't have the tag. Okay.
You didn't, you didn't get a message saying you were curated.
Right.
There may have been some way to know, but I didn't know. But anyway, I had no intention of being paid for my work. I wasn't interested in putting my stuff behind a paywall. I wanted, getting curated on Medium means that the editors select your work for more intense distribution. They send it out in emails to people who are interested in various topics. They push it out to people to see in their feeds more heavily, etc. If you don't get curated, the only people who are going to see it realistically are people in your network, people who follow you.
basically. Yeah.
Right. People who follow you, or people who follow your publication if you happen to publish it in a publication. If you get curated, it gets seen more broadly. But anyway, I didn't want that. So mostly because I wanted a wider distribution, and I thought that putting it behind the paywall would limit distribution. And I was very stubborn about that for about a year. And I just, because I'm a really, really stubborn guy, and I would not change my mind.
Right.
And finally, they twisted my arm when they stopped curating stuff that wasn't behind the paywall. They just stopped. And I saw my readership start to go down, so I reluctantly started putting stuff behind the paywall, and then got shocked. I'm like, what? Are you serious? You're going to pay me more than $1,000 a month to do something that I'm more than willing to do for free?
Right.
I'm all in.
Well, so I want to. So right now, for the most part, your nonfiction is what is behind the paywall.
Yes.
So all of those short articles, and they're, for the most part, they're mostly advocacy pieces. That's the ones that
are.
Okay.
They are. Although I publish also personal memoir, like my piece on Quentin Crisp, who was a friend of mine.
Yeah.
My piece on Quentin Crisp this morning is personal memoir, and it got curated. A lot of my personal memoir does not get curated.
Right.
But some of it does really well anyway.
Well, and some of it, even with your former partner, I mean, it's so the universal themes. And I guess that's where I was going is, so your nonfiction is behind the paywall, and it of course, it's very different from your fiction, but you're still touching on the same themes, the themes of love,
right.
the themes of acceptance, and
right.
Yeah.
Right. Except that my personal memoir tends not to have the angry edge that my nonfiction essays have.
Right. Right.
So, and a lot of that is intentional. People who meet me in real life think that I'm just a sweetie. You know, I'm a very mild-mannered, very unassuming person. And sometimes people who have met me through my advocacy essays want to know where the angry activist is. Right. I'm like, well, I don't know what to tell you. This is me.
So. Yeah. Like, okay, so you are there. Like here, we can show what is it? Multi-dimensional LGBTQ and faith-based bigotry. I mean, that is advocacy stuff you're writing here.
Right. Now, yeah. So here I wrote this piece on the National Day of Prayer that went down last week, and it's actually fairly. It's kind of maybe not typical of some of my advocacy piece, because I wrote this at the behest of the Center for American Progress. And
it is a very moving piece.
Yeah, and so because I was writing it for them, I wrote it in the voice that they requested, which is kind of not an angry voice.
Right.
But,
okay, so I wanna open this up to people who have questions. And Leslie, I hear you. What does that mean when you get that message? I want to stay focused for now just on where Jim is a specialist and kind of that next level of how to use Medium. And I can actually answer that and tell you that send a note. And anyway, I will help you there. So if folks have got specific questions, you can either come on and ask the question, which would be lovely to hear another voice, or you can type it into the chat. And if nobody has questions, then what will we do? I'd like to, I guess, talk about.
Here we have a question from Susan Peters. How often do you publish? Once or twice a day? Usually once, maybe 3 or 4 times a week, twice. Oh, wait a minute, now that's not true. More often than that, because I also lead a small fiction writers group on Medium, small LGBT-based fiction writers group. And I publish a lot of administrative stuff like writing challenges and just stuff generally promoting that group. So that doesn't come, I'm excluding that from the number of things I publish. But of my own stuff, I publish perhaps, I I work every day of the week. So that's 7, maybe 10 or 11 stories a week.
Right. And of those 10 or 11 stories, how many of them are part of your fiction family, and how many are more of the advocacy or memoir? Like,
I've been in a little bit of a fiction slump the last month because I've just been really busy with other things.
mm-hmm.
But normally I would publish 3 or 4 fiction chapters on something, different projects a week. And I have not been doing that for the last month.
No,
but I'll be back on track shortly as my life evens out with just some personal stuff that's been going on.
I have a couple of questions about this. This is Bonnie. Hi. So just to clarify, the fiction is not behind the paywall?
No, it is not. Although that's not entirely true. I was in the middle, when I decided to start putting my stuff behind the paywall, I was in the middle of serializing 2 novels, one of which I had already serialized. That was The David and the Lion's Den. But I have this other big project that I am so proud of and so in love with, Moon Over Berlin, Sun Over Santorini, and I'm serializing that right now. Nobody's seen it before. It's only ever existed in a notebook, and I'm serializing it right now. But I was halfway through with it when I started deciding to use the paywall. And I didn't feel that it was fair to my beta readers who had stuck with me for 20 chapters to suddenly cut them off if they didn't have Medium memberships. I can imagine how that would feel to me if I was in love with a novel and I couldn't read it anymore. So,
well, can you explain one thing before you go on? Like so that suggests that you had your chapters up there, 20 chapters up there already, and then you said you decided to serialize. So what does serializing, how is that different from what you were doing? I can see all this.
Okay, so it's not different. The only difference is that I decided to start, Moon Over Berlin, Sun Over Santorini, I was publishing 1 to 2 chapters a week, pretty consistently, but not behind the paywall.
Right.
And that's what I mean by serializing, publishing 1 chapter at a time. And when the time came for me to go all in with the paywall stuff, I had to make a decision. Am I going to put Moon Over behind the paywall with the subsequent chapters, with the new chapters?
Right. And
I decided not to do that because I didn't want to do that to some very loyal readers without Medium accounts who had stuck with me all this time.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. So that was just...
So I'm still confused. So it's not behind the paywall. So
it is not.
You have no fiction behind the paywall.
Yes, I do, and that was what I was coming to. I write at least 1 short story every 2 weeks, and I have to do that because it's part of my fiction writing project that I lead, and I can't ask the members of my group to publish a short story if I don't too. So I publish at least 1 short story every 2 weeks, and they are now behind the paywall. Anything new that I'm publishing that's not part of one of these serialized novels is going behind the paywall.
And what is your process? I mean, when you say you publish 2 chapters a week when you're serializing, does that mean that you've already written drafts of them and you're putting those drafts up, or you change?
Yes.
How far?
Yes, that's exactly what that means. In this case, okay, so for Moon Over, I have a first draft only that I wrote a very long time ago, and it's in pencil in a notebook. And so my process is pretty rough on that one because it's bad. I mean, the version in the notebook is really bad. And so I'll sit down and I'll rewrite the chapter. And it takes me about as much time as it would take me to write a chapter of a novel. So there's a lot of time.
Now you're working on it on a second draft, though, so it's probably later.
Well, no. The other one, the other one that I first showed you, the murder mystery literary novel.
Yeah.
That one, the David and the Lion's Den. That one's already digitized. That one's already on its. I'm on like 4th draft of it now. So I can pretty much just take 20 minutes and say, oh, this sentence sucks, let me rewrite this, or let me add a little bit of description here, or take away a little description there, and then press the publish button, and it is done. It really takes no more than 30 minutes.
Yeah.
So.
Did you have a second question, Bonnie?
I have a lot of questions, but I'll just let somebody else ask something now.
Okay, well, I'm going to ask one on Deborah's behalf because she doesn't have a mic. I think she's the one who said she didn't have a mic. So, Jim, what advice would you give to a brand new fantasy fiction author to get started on Medium? She's just published but doesn't have many fans yet.
Do you write queer stuff at all? I mean, is there an LGBTQ theme at all with your fantasy stuff? Just
Deborah,
offhand?
there you go. No.
No. Okay. Well, if there were, I would invite you to join my writers group, and I could help you publicize your stuff. I'd love to anyway. If you send me links to what you publish, I will be sure to applaud them. Read them and maybe give you some feedback and applaud and help you, get going that way. But what advice would I give you? Write really, really, really good stuff. I mean, write excellent fiction. It
takes off
patience, though. I mean, I was really lucky when I came on Medium, and this won't work for most people. When I came on Medium, I had a huge fan base already, and somehow, thank God, somebody at Medium noticed that. Some curator, some editor, and I mean, it was just. They decided to start pushing my work, and I didn't do anything to deserve that. So I can't tell you how to make that happen. I was lucky.
Right.
I mean, because I see so many people write. I mean, there's so much good writing on Medium that nobody ever reads, and it's tragic. It's just like there's so many awesome fiction writers out there who don't ever get published and who won't ever get published.
And books that are published, even great published books that just don't get the eyeballs. Yeah.
Right. I mean, it just happens. So, but what can you do? Write excellent fiction. Okay, I can give better advice than that.
Okay.
If you want editors and curators on Medium to notice you, you have to publish. People say publish every day, 5 days a week. I say publish every day. Do you have a body of work that you can draw from and publish? I don't know. And for some fiction writers, that's not going to work because you can't publish every day.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just, you can't. And I wouldn't, if I didn't have a 15-year-old body of work that I was drawing from, I wouldn't be able to either.
Right. That's for your fiction, because your nonfiction is quite timely.
Right. And even that, when I got started, I'm going to tell you guys here how I cheated. Very few people know this.
Well, hopefully a lot of people see this.
I cheated. No, it's okay. Anybody can know this. A lot of people do know this. It wasn't hard to figure out. But when I first started on Medium with my nonfiction, I drew from my previous body of work on Quora.
Right.
And I would simply take and I would rewrite an article or just dress it up a little bit and publish it. And I published twice a day, nonfiction, every day for 6 months.
Wow.
And
so those were probably like 3 and 4 minute pieces then, under 1,000 words?
Yeah, maybe under 1,000, maybe up to as many as 1,200 once in a while.
Mm-hmm.
But rarely only 300. If you don't write generally the minimum expectation for your curated piece on Medium is 400 words. If you don't write at least 400 words, they're probably not going to distribute it. There are exceptions, but not often.
Mm.
So.
Oh, neat. Sorry, James, I'm just looking at Deborah. It's not for Deborah's book, it's her daughter's book. That's really neat. One thing that I'm hearing a lot, Deborah, is, especially for young people or people who get it, I've never been on, it freaks me out, is to use Reddit. Reddit is a great place to find people, so create a relationship between the Medium account and the Reddit account.
Really?
Yeah.
It's funny, I have seen a couple of my pieces take off with lots of hits on Reddit, but I have personally never explored Reddit. I don't know anything about it.
There's a Facebook group that I belong to and they're saying that there's some good value in doing that. Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
And since young people,
Speaking of which, I find very good value in publicizing, promoting on Twitter and Facebook. Most of this shocks so many people when I say it so casually, but most of my articles get many, many, many more reads outside of Medium than inside of Medium. Now that doesn't translate to dollars, because usually these are not Medium members who applaud.
Right.
But I wrote a piece, for example, this is maybe my biggest piece on Medium, I'm not sure, but I wrote a piece about Judge Kavanaugh and his little known, the little known episode of how he used to torment homophobically torment his gay roommate at Yale. And 50,000 people read that article.
Wow.
And under 1,000 people on Medium read it.
Right.
So it all came from Twitter.
And I mean, I think that's another thing, Deborah, that Jim has going for him is he's writing on something that's very topical. So even your fiction, I mean, I see the two so beautifully connecting, you know, people who are interested in human rights, in LGBTQ rights, in just rights, period, and
right.
decency, then will be interested in reading about the characters in your books as well, and those struggles. And yeah.
Right.
Michelle had a question. Michelle, you want to unmute yourself and ask your question of Jim?
Hi, yeah. I'd love to hear about what happened on Quora, if you don't mind talking about it. And
Sure.
as a person who believes in activism and advocacy, and is doing some, that's kind of one of my, you know, big bad wolf fears, is that somehow I'm going to say the wrong thing and I'm going to get cut.
Right. Well, okay, so Quora is a special case, though. They have very, very particular rules about what they call the BNBR policy. Be nice, be respectful. So, and there's no leeway with that. And they warned me a whole bunch of times that I was right on the line.
And who were you not being nice or respectful towards?
The last straw was an article that I wrote about the Catholic Church. In fact, you can find it if you go to my, how best I could find it easily. Let me find it on my phone, and then I'll tell you what to search for.
And then you just drop, okay.
Or I could drop a link. I don't know. Let's see. Oh, I have a weather warning on my phone. That's interesting. Huh. Freeze warning. Get out of here. Anyway, I don't care. All right. So, gosh, how am I best going to find this? I don't want to waste you guys' time. HIV and the Catholic Church is a good search string. Let me see. I write
inside here?
Yeah. See if you can. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Wait. Go. Yeah. United in Anger: The Catholic Church's Fight Against HIV Education. That one.
Okay.
This is a version of the article that finally got me kicked off Quora. One of the reasons I used to be in ACT UP, and if we can come down, do a text search on spit. This is the story about the day I chased a Catholic priest and spit in his face.
Do you want me to keep looking for spit?
Yeah, one more time. Maybe we'll come to the part. Yeah. Okay, wait. I go up just a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna read. The priest stood on his milk crate and preached. Something in me snapped. I couldn't stand the sight of him, and I charged. One of his cohorts saw me coming and threw himself at me. He fell in a heap on the ground just before I reached the priest. I learned later that Herman had swung and connected with a roundhouse to his jaw. I didn't know that. I just jumped over and ripped the bullhorn out of the priest's hands and spit violently into his face. He leered at me, eyes round and red, and I could smell his sweat as my swittle dripped from his greasy black bangs into his brown eyes and ran down his acne-pocked face. Okay, you get the idea. I'm being very evocative here, and very emotional.
And is this nonfiction? This actually happened?
This happened to me, yes.
Right, okay.
And many, many people read this on Quora and freaked the fuck out. And they disinvited me from ever publishing anything on their site again. But Medium has been awesome about it.
Did Quora delete your body of work? Like, how did that work?
No, they typically don't do that.
So you pretend you still have that presence there. You still have that big body of work and presence.
I do, and the amusing thing is that even though I haven't published anything on Quora in more than a year, I continue to get huge reads over there from my existing stuff. So
did they unpublish
many more than I ever get on Medium? So this story they deleted. This is the only story of mine that they ever deleted, and they sent me a nasty note telling me that it was hate speech and don't you dare ever do anything like this again.
Huh.
Did they quantify what about it exactly they felt was hateful, or?
No, and that's one of the problems with Quora is that they don't. As a matter of policy, they will not give you feedback on what it is they had a problem with. Because I guess I can understand why, as a matter of policy, because they don't have enough staff to do that.
Well, and they probably don't want to have an argument back and forth.
Right.
So.
Right, and they probably can't have an argument back and forth because they don't have enough people to have an argument back and forth with
and they don't want
everybody who would have an argument.
Right, they don't want to get into legal trouble of having said specifics, and then you can then sue them or whatever based on specifics. So,
but again, for the original question, I wouldn't worry too much about it, especially not on Medium. I mean, they're not like that at all.
So Jim, back to Medium, or are you finished, Michelle?
Well, I was just going to ask, do you find that like with a circle like Medium or a platform where it's maybe the doors are more open, do you also find more, let's say your work is on the left of center, do you also find more stuff on the right of center? And how does that
kind of, there is some. I saw just this morning, saw a nasty piece, actually a very nicely, politely worded nasty piece by a TERF, and but you don't see that very often.
Okay.
Medium's pretty lefty, you know. I don't think that right-wing people feel very comfortable typically on Medium. I don't suppose they do on lots of popular social media sites, except in, closed circles.
Yeah.
So.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Bonnie?
Yeah. So you talked about publishing for, several times a day or once a day for 6 months. And you also had your own following before you got there. Yeah. So is it really, what if you just published it, once or twice a week? That's just not going to get you the traction.
And I'm not going to present myself as like the Medium expert guy. I can only tell you about my experiences, but I would think that if you only published once or twice a week on Medium, that your chances to have your work distributed by the Medium editors would be very, very slim. That doesn't mean that you can't do it. It doesn't mean that there's not value in it. But
and Bonnie, just so that you don't feel like you're at a huge disadvantage because Jim came to this with 100,000 Quora followers, on Medium itself, you've got just under 3,000 followers.
Right.
So you earlier said that you're making about $1,000 or
about $1,000 a month. Yeah.
Okay. Just on the nonfiction, and soon you'll be putting
on the nonfiction and on the few short stories that I've published since I started, doing that.
So the majority, though. So Bonnie, it's there's definitely a curve, and probably Jim beat that curve and got helicoptered to the top of it more quickly than we will. But that's not to say that it's not. He's only 3,000 followers ahead of us.
Well,
right.
Okay.
And it's not, 3,000 followers is quite a lot on Medium, actually. 3,000 followers on Medium usually means a lot more than 3,000 followers somewhere else.
Fair. Okay, fair.
Yes. But so does 500. I was getting huge distribution and reads and stuff when I had 500 followers.
Right.
So,
And are you in touch with those followers? Meaning, do you have their emails or anything like that, or it's just?
Well, sort of. Okay, so this is we're gonna go into the plumbing of Medium right now.
Are we going to go into one of the editor crossing genres, because that's one place where you'll have their
yeah.
emails, right?
Let's talk about publication. Crossing Genres is a publication. I'm the fiction editor for Crossing Genres, and once a week, I send a letter to every one of the 22,000 people who subscribe to Crossing Genres, and showcase the fiction by the writers in my group. Click on fiction up there, will you?
I will.
This is my stuff. I mean, not mine, my group's stuff. Yeah, scroll down past the featured stuff and into the current stuff. So look at the fiction Saturday, or don't look at that one. That's not typical. Come down, scroll down a little bit further. Okay, LGBTQ fiction Friday fiction triumphant. Okay, and if we can look, this went out as a letter to the 22,000 Crossing Genre subscribers, and so this guy. Brian B. Foundapen just finished his first novel, which is fantastic. It's a brilliant novel. And so I highlighted his stuff and I showcased him at the top. And then I talked about my latest chapter of Moon Over.
Sorry, there we go. So that's where you're showcasing him here.
Right. And then I went, yep. And then I go down to one of my chapters. And then, okay, Valentine Wiggin, another Serialize. This is another Serialize piece. David Wade Chambers, another Serialize piece. This is brilliant. Anybody wants to? Oh my God, that's so good.
This one here.
Yeah, no, it's his whole Prairie Death Tales series. David is fascinating. David is a man in his 80s who is a brilliant academic, former professor at Harvard, and currently living with his gay lover in Australia. He's also a brilliant photographer, and he and his writing partner wrote this amazing illustrated novel about life in the American heartland in the 80s and 90s in this fictional town of Diane City, Oklahoma. And it's really something. It needs more of an edit, but what am I doing? Never mind. I'm getting to the point where I'm talking about my writers, but I shouldn't be. What I'm trying to tell you is that there are other ways to get your stuff known on Medium than by just publishing it on your own. For example, if you publish in my group, and I'm not saying you should, there are lots of publications out there, then we do things like this. And also, not only your subscribers will see your stuff, but the publication subscribers will see it. I don't do that, and that's what I said. I'm about to get down into the nitty gritty here. The only publication I ever publish in is this one. The other publication that I use is my blog, and that's a little bit different than what most people would want to do, because
that's what you've got in Crossing Genres. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, because I already had. You gotta click on other stories by James Finn right there. You'll get to my profile.
Why am I not seeing it?
Okay, just go down a little bit to your right.
Oh, there we go. There it is.
Thank you. And once you click on that, you'll be able to, now you can click on my blog down below.
Yes, there you go, your blog.
That's it. Okay, so the only place I publish my nonfiction is to my blog. And my nonfiction, my memoir. And this way,
you also have everybody who is following you. You also are able to send messages to them.
That's right, and I'm able to send letters that go out to the people who follow my blog, not me personally, my blog. But the biggest reason I do it is not because I can send those. I only just started doing that. The biggest reason I do it is because every time somebody reads one of my stories, you see Fiction Projects, Ask Auntie Jimothy. I forgot all about my advice column. I write an advice column, Ask Auntie Jimothy. But anytime anybody clicks on one of the stories in my blog, they get that header at the top. And
this one here with all of the options.
Right.
Reading about you.
And people and people browse and it works,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and they don't, when you publish in somebody else's publication, then they're going to see everybody else's stuff in those headers, everybody else who ever publishes in that publication. When you publish in your own publication, they just see your stuff. And I don't know, probably because of the fact that I got that magic jump ahead when I first started on Medium, that worked for me. I'm not saying that that would work for everybody. And it's an investment. It's an investment of time because if you publish in bigger publications, you can get a bigger immediate hit off of that. So you have to decide how you're going to do it.
Right.
And I decided to go all out on my own blog and take the stab that I could develop a personal following of people who were interested enough in just what I was writing that they would subscribe to my blog and follow me that way. And it worked. I mean, maybe it wouldn't have, but it did for whatever reason.
So yeah, and just to see, like, this is how lovely all of Jim's work looks and how easy it is to scroll through and see what you might want to read next in his publication, which he calls his blog. But if we were just to go to his profile, which is where I keep landing first.
Right. It's not pretty.
It's not pretty, and it's hard to scroll and look, it gets jammed up and
right.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
So there's definitely,
and it's all mixed up by category, you know, it's not organized.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's fine. People still will do that. I've got this piece pinned at the top, the piece from my David and the Lion's Den.
Right.
See how
Well,
that's
there's a
pinned.
difference between the people that are following you on the blog and the people that are reading your publication, your magazine, and the people that are just finding you by your profile.
There's not a big difference, except that the people who follow or subscribe to my publication have taken something of an extra effort to do that. So I might count them as more like core fans. You know, these people made an effort to click on the subscribe button in my blog, which they had to actually find, you know. And
how many people do you have following? Does it say anywhere?
I don't know. Somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,000-ish. I haven't looked in a long time. I really honestly don't know.
Fair.
So I try as hard as I can not to obsess about stats, but by background, I'm a former Air Force intelligence officer. So I have a really hard time not obsessing about stats because I did it for a living.
Yeah.
So the only way that I can not obsess about stats is not to look at them, which is why I don't know how many followers my blog has right now.
Right.
And I'm not particularly interested in knowing, so please don't click.
Okay, I'm not going to. I will not. Other questions from folks? I'm noticing that we've only got about 6 minutes left. What question do you have that Jim hasn't answered? Susan.
I've got a question about the images you're using. Do you pick all those yourself, or does the Medium site help you with those?
I do pick them all myself, and it's a chore. It's really hard. First of all, because if you want to be curated, if you want Medium to distribute your stuff, you got to be legal. And they're really strict about that. So I use 3 free services, and I also use Wikimedia. And you know what? My dog is coming home. Hold on. And it's going to be a mess. So I got to change rooms here. So we're not disturbed. My dog had a vet appointment.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh, he's fine. It's routine. Getting his nails trimmed and things like that. All right. So
Wikimedia. I'm not familiar
Wikimedia.
with that one.
And you have to credit it properly, though.
How do you spell Wikimedia?
It's just like Wikipedia, but with an M, or media, Wikimedia.
Okay.
And you can see
it's part of the Wikipedia system. See how I did the crediting there?
Yeah.
And you have to do that. If they think that you've used an image with that attribution, they're not going to distribute your story.
Yeah.
So, I hate to say this, and this is another little secret. Please don't tell anybody. I'm kidding. When I publish stuff that I know isn't going to be curated and that I don't care, like my stuff that's not behind the paywall, or just maybe stuff that I just know has no shot of being curated, and I don't care one way or the other.
Yeah.
I don't bother. I use any picture I want.
Not advice to take. This is like,
yeah, don't take that advice. I do it.
But there you go. And the other, you can see, so Susan, so there's a picture you don't have credited.
Right. And this is my fiction.
Yeah.
And I had not up until that point bothered crediting images in my fiction. So just this week, I started researching paid. See, you're catching me again. Not credited. I started just this week. I started researching, getting real. I figure I'm making enough money on Medium that I can afford to pay somebody $25 or $50 a month for access to real photos.
Yeah.
What are the other ones that you use besides Wikimedia?
I use Pexels.com, Pixabay.com, and Unsplash.com.
Pexels.com, Pixabay.com, and Unsplash is the one, Bonnie, that automatically comes up.
Right. Yeah.
And honestly, they all pretty much have the same photos on them.
I find
all three services.
Pexels is a whole lot got a better search than Pixabay.
Oh, but here, I was just telling somebody this on Medium Mastery this morning. This is your tip of the week. Don't use the image guy's search engine. Use Google's. And here's how. Into your Google search bar, type this, site : no space, Pexels.com. And then
space,
no space, site : Pexels.com.
Yeah. And then
then any of your search terms, because Google's image search is fantastic. Pexels image searching is awful.
Right. Okay.
You won't find what you're looking for if you use more than one or two search terms. Pexels doesn't know what to do. The Pexels engine doesn't know what to do with that.
Frustrating. Yes, that is
right.
The truth. Yeah.
But if you do what I just showed you and let Google do the searching for you, you leverage the power of Google's image AI searching capabilities.
Worth the price of admission today. Thank you.
That tip right there is worth listening to this today.
That's right.
Let me tell you.
I love that you saved it till the last minute so that people.
Right.
Excellent. Right. Okay. So anybody else before we let Jim go?
Can I ask, can I ask about your your total umbrella? I know all of us as artists often have our side hustle, and then our other side hustle, and then our main, the appetizer and the entree. Can I ask you about your full meal deal, like how you're running your show?
You guys are gonna laugh your heads off at this. I retired early from the plastics recycling business, so I have an income from that. I owned a plastics recycling factory in the Detroit area, and got out a couple of years ago. Not a lot of people wouldn't. I wanted to write. I wanted to be an artist, and I wanted to stop having to, spend hours a day working and not writing.
Yeah.
And I was able to get a modest income that I felt comfortable, that would tide me over at least until I was old enough for Social Security, which isn't unfortunately all that long off. It's coming. And so that's how I did it. So and I was relatively comfortable. I moved to northern Michigan, where the cost of living is really, really super cheap. And also I'm caring for my father, who's in the end stages of COPD. And so that's what I do. I mean, I write and promote pretty much all day long, every day. I don't have a day job.
And can I ask about hours? Like how many hours per day? I mean, and I know
you can. That's what I was about to, because that's what I was about to talk about. And please don't tell my therapist, but it's at least 12. At least. It's okay. I'm lying. It's a lot more than that.
Wow.
So sort of like 9 in the morning till 9 at night kind of thing?
So I wake up at 7:30 every morning. I really am an ex-military officer, you can tell. I wake up religiously at 7:30 every morning, and I get a cup of coffee, and I go on Twitter, and I retweet my promotion pieces from the day before. I go into the Twitter retweet room that I'm part of, and I take care of any business that's in there, because those are my buds, and they're going to tweet my pieces out for me. And then I go to the piece that I published that morning, and I look at it, and I pray that it got curated, and my day goes great if it did, and I feel awful if it didn't. Just telling you how it is. And then I create a tweet for that, and I tweet that, and then I drop it into my retweet room, and then I go to Facebook and I modify that tweet and I publish that on my profile, and then I have about 20 LGBT specific Facebook groups that I'm part of, and I publish and I post that in each group. By then, it's usually 9 o'clock. Then I spend a couple of hours reading and engaging with stories on Medium, because you have to do that. I mean, if you're gonna, it's a writing community and you have to be part of it. I mean, the only reason Donna knows me, for example, is that
we're in the same Facebook group.
I read and engaged with her stories because I liked them first, but second, because part of my job is as a writer on Medium, as a member of the Medium writing community, my job is to read other people's stuff and engage sincerely with it. Not pretending. I mean, Donna, you know that I've written you sincere, meaningful comments
many times on my posts. Yeah.
And I spend at least 2 hours a day doing that. And that's a minimum. I could easily spend way more than that and profit from it. But so then I take the dog for a walk, and then I write and I write and I write and I write. And then by 8:30 at night, I do a little bit more promoting, and then I get my piece or pieces queued up for the morning, and go to sleep by normally 10:30 or 11, and pretty much that entire time, every bit of it except walking the dog has been worth it. So that's why I say don't tell my therapist, because he tells me not to do that. But I do anyway. So it's there's for any artist, there's such a tension between creating the art and promoting the art. And I wish I were one of those fortunate artists who had an agent who was actually selling my work rather than, patting my back and telling me to, be patient. And I didn't have to do that, but I do. And I can talk about being lucky, but I've done that for years now. If it wasn't on Medium, then it was on Quora. And so part of the reason that I have a big fan base, and part of the reason so many people read my work so much, is that I have sweated blood over it. So, because I really want it bad. I think that I write some really good fiction, and I'm desperate to get it read.
I know we're at time, and Bonnie, I'm going to table your question around the curation. I think we should talk to someone who's an expert. I'm air quoting expert in curation, because there are lots of people who can spend an hour talking about that. But Jim, you just triggered a question for me, which is you're hungry, and is your hunger isn't based on making money. It's I'm guessing.
No, I could care less.
It's based on changing lives. Is that kind of your
changing lives and being okay? So yeah, changing lives. My nonfiction stuff, and for my fiction, I'm an artist. I really am. I'm not just I'm not just an activist. I'm really a writer. I'm really an artist, and I really care deeply about the artistic quality of my fiction. And I want to be known as an author. I want to be known as a really good fiction writer, and I'm hungry for that. So, and it's not about getting paid. I want the getting paid to be a side effect.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Thank you, Michelle, for that question. Susan, Leslie, Bonnie, all of your questions. Kirsten, do you have anything you want to ask Jim before we let him go? No? Eileen, you're here because of the next meeting that's coming up. Marie and Deborah and Holly, anything before we let Jim go? Marie, thanks very much for the generous information. Okay, that's what she says. Jim, thank you. I'm going to stop sharing for a second. Hold on. How do I do this? Stop share. We are back. We still can't see you. Jim said that we can't see him because he hasn't been to a what? A barber? No, you haven't.
Yeah, I didn't realize until this morning that this was video, and I just didn't feel. I just don't feel presentable right now.
I live
out in the country, and I haven't. It's a long round trip to get to town, and I just haven't had my hair cut in a long time.
And I really want to acknowledge and say thank you. Yes, I think it was last night, or you woke up this morning and realized that what you had thought
it was a video chat.
It was a video chat, and somehow that hadn't been clear. So I really want to say, and this is your first time doing a video chat? So thank you for stepping into that uncomfortable place and excelling, doing such a great job. Really appreciate it.
Sure. If you guys have more questions, I'd be willing to come back at some point.
All right. Well, I will keep you posted. And a few of us are there. Bonnie and Leslie and Kirsten. I think you're on Medium now. You're just getting going. And there are a few others. So
right. Oh, and if you listen to this today and you're on Medium and you want to reach out and ask me something on Medium or ask me to help you publish, help you promote something on Medium, again, I consider that to be part of my job. That's what I do. So don't be shy. So
thank you. Thank you for generosity of spirit and all that you do in all of the realms that you work. Really, I appreciate you.
Thank you. Me too.
All right. Are you a member of the Creative Academy yet? Join us today and unlock a wealth of resources, masterclasses, feedback opportunities, and community events designed to help you reach the next step in your writing journey. No matter what stage you're at, we've got a helping hand to guide you along the way. Check out our free resource room if you'd like to get a taste of how we can help you reach your writing and publishing goals. Thank you for bringing us along on your writing and publishing journey. Crystal, Eileen, and I hope to see you around the Creative Academy soon.